I got a hookup invite from my boss. My phone dinged, breaking through my reverie, and I realized I left it in my tote bag in the living room. I groaned into my soft bed covers in frustration before trudging reluctantly to the living room to get it. I looked at the notification. It was a text message from him, my baby. On reflex, my cheeks heated up and I bit my lip nervously. "How was your day?" he asked. I wanted to spill all the details of my horrid day at work, but held back, not wanting to sound bitter. Not to him. I wanted him to see me as sunshine, not a scummy bastard's overworked assistant. Baby and I had been chatting for 3 months, every single day on the Feathermate app. Feathermate was a faceless online chat app that my best friend Jesse forced me to sign up on as a beta tester. A couple of days after joining the app, all I met were weirdos and creeps. It was about a week later that the app matched me with a man who called himself JC. The app didn't require real names on accurate information to ensure the user's safety. All I knew about JC was his age and that he was in Manhattan. The text cursor disappeared and reappeared, begging for me to type something. Finally, I relented. "Fine, baby. How was yours?" "Well, I'm still at work. Have you gotten home yet?" He was still at work? At this hour? Maybe he worked in a shitty company just like me. "I just got in a few minutes ago. I was getting changed when your message came in." "Changed? So you're not dressed right now?" My heart rate picked up. I was still fully dressed, but I didn't want to tell him that. Lying wasn't an option either, so I made quick work of my shirt buttons, pulling the black fabric off my skin. I glanced at my pants, my hands shooting to my belt buckle. No, that would be too much. I picked up my phone again. "I'm kinda dressed. My shirt is off, though." My phone dinged with a response almost immediately. "Can I see?" Yes, I groaned at my quick response. My brain didn't even bother processing his text. What happened to my self-control? I ran my hand through my brown hair while taking in deep breaths. "You first." "Not at work." Mr. Carmichael's voice echoed in my head as I read his text. What the hell? I scowled, reading his text again in Jake Carmichael's voice. "Not at work." Why did my Feathermate friend sound like my annoying boss? Suspicious, I asked. "Where do you work?" "You're a curious little one. Are you finally ready to meet me?" I pondered over his text as I walked back to my bed. Baby, his username, stared back at me in bright yellow letters followed by a heart emoji. I'd called him that once after a few drinks at a company dinner, and he changed his username to it immediately. We agreed not to share personal information at first, but within a month, Baby started asking us to meet. I didn't want to. What if he didn't like how I looked? What if he smelled like fish in person? At a loss for words, I sighed aloud into the silence of my room and resorted to the classic question. "Have you had anything to eat yet?" Silence. This wasn't my first time curving his attempt to meet up. Maybe he was busy or getting ready to head home. I stared at my phone, my heart racing every time a notification popped up, only to be disappointed when it wasn't him. I debated switching my phone to D&D, but I feared missing his text. After an hour of waiting, I finally gave up hope. My heart sunk deep in my stomach. Baby gave me something to look forward to after my long days at Seacrest. I was addicted, and he had become my drug. I didn't know what he looked like or his real name. I could be spending my days talking to a made-up persona. For all I knew, maybe it was one of my friends from high school making fun of me. However, the anonymity made it more exciting. The risk made it more thrilling. It also felt exhilarating talking to someone who didn't know me. I could walk past him in the busy streets of New York, and he wouldn't recognize me. It was easier to be open with him. It was easier to fall for him. The next morning. "You're late, Riley," Mr. Carmichael said as soon as I walked into the office. Soft sunlight spilled over his dark hair, causing the strands of glitter like stars. Jake Carmichael was simply gorgeous. His dark, overgrown, curly hair tumbled over his intense brown eyes that were partially blocked by sleek, prescribed glasses. The square curve of his glasses highlighted his strong jawline and chiseled features. His tailored suit fit perfectly, accentuating his broad shoulders and lean frame, making him look more like a model than a manager. The combination of his good looks and authoritative presence made it all the more infuriating that someone so attractive could be so insufferable. To be honest, I understood why Jessie would kill for a moment in a locked room with him, but she also had a hopeless crush and marriage fantasy with him. Whatever she saw in him, I hoped I never saw it. He was an awful person with good looks, but his good looks should never be an excuse. "Do I pay you to stand in my doorway and look stupid?" Mr. Carmichael's voice shook me to my core, and my grip on the files loosened, sending them onto the floor with a loud thud. I crouched down, gathering them with my shaky hands. "No, you don't. I'm sorry, sir." Jesse really needs to get her eyes tested. The scowl on his handsome face felt like he had been waiting for me to come so he could scold me. "Then get your ass into my office now." As soon as he took his eyes off me, I gathered the files and sighed. If I ever got asked if I knew what it felt like to work with the devil, I'd say yes. I shuffled towards his office, my shoes echoing on the floor. Mr. Carmichael sat behind his desk, tapping his pen on the wooden surface impatiently. "Sit down," he barked, not looking up from his computer screen. I guess I wasn't worth a glance. I sat on the edge of the chair, my stomach nodding with anxiety. He finally looked at me. "Do you know how important punctuality is in this company?" I nodded, biting my tongue to avoid saying something I'd regret. "We have had this conversation a few times, and from those times I've learned that no excuse would cut it for Mr. Carmichael." "This is the third time this month you've been late," he continued. "We can't afford to have employees who don't take their responsibilities seriously." I wanted to scream. I always worked hard, and I always tried to impress him, to get him to acknowledge me, but it was like he was blinded to every good thing I did. "I'm sorry, Mr. Carmichael, it won't happen again," I managed to say, though the words tasted bitter. "See that it doesn't," he said dismissively, returning to his screen. "You can go now." I stood up, eager to leave his presence. As I returned to my desk, my colleagues shot me sympathetic looks. The office buzzed with phones ringing and keyboards clacking. I sank into my chair and sighed, staring blankly at my computer screen. Jesse leaned over from the next cubicle, whispering, "What happened?" "The usual," I muttered, "late again, and he chewed me out for it." Jessie rolled her eyes. "He's such a jerk. Don't let him get to you." I forced a smile. "Easier said than done." I logged into my computer and sorted through emails to keep myself busy and keep from thinking about Mr. Carmichael and his stuck-up attitude. I couldn't wait for the workday to be over to tell baby all about my bad day at work. Later at lunch. "You've been staring at your phone since we left the building, Riley," Jessie said, playing mother hen as usual. "You stare at the computer screen all day, then your phone every other time. That can't be good for your eyes." "I'm talking to baby," I replied, glancing up at her. "Ooh," she cooed, wiggling her shoulders. "How are things going with him?" "Really good," I answered. "He makes me happy. He distracts me from Jake and his crazy attitude." We walked through the bustling streets of Manhattan, weaving through the lunch break crowd. The city's noise buzzed around us, from the car horns to the snippets of conversations. "He makes up for it with his looks, don't you think?" Jessie asked, and I turned to stare at her. "What?" I laughed. "I could watch him all day. He's so attractive. His eyes, his jaw. Oh my God, his lips. I wonder what those lips can do." I burst out laughing, drawing a few curious glances from passerbys. "Ew, Jessie, that's disgusting." "Oh, get over it," she chuckled. Silence enveloped us, and we turned to our phones to respond to texts and other things. I was talking to baby. He told me about a series he just had started watching, and each time his message came in, I felt my heart beat harder and my stomach flipped like a child on a roller coaster. I always had this sheepish smile whenever I was reading his text. I wanted to impress and show him that I was good enough for him. If I could have my way, I'd love to stay in bed all day and just talk to him. He never sent voice notes, but I knew he sounded like a dream. The man was driving me crazy, and I hoped I was also driving him crazy. I'd never been in love. I'd crushed on a few guys in high school and college, but it was never serious. None of them made my heart beat speed train fast or made my day just by sending one text. "You've been in love before, right?" I asked Jessie as we walked into the building. She glanced at me, studying my expression before shrugging. "Every other Friday. Why?" "I think I'm in love with baby, but I'm not sure. I don't even know what love feels like." We stepped into the elevator and Jessie pressed the button for our floor. "What makes you think you're in love with him?" she asked. Her question made me break into a wide grin, my cheeks flushing red. "He makes me incredibly happy. He makes life worth living. Not just happy, joyful. I don't know how to explain it. Is a month too short to feel like this?" Jessie leaned against the elevator wall. "People fall in love in 3 days. If you meet someone you connect with, it doesn't take forever to know. We met in college, and 2 days later, I started calling you my best friend. When you meet your person, you'll know." "What do you think?" I don't know what to do, I said. Tell him, Jesse replied. What? I asked, confused. Yeah, tell him. What's the worst you could say? No? Learn from me. What? I repeated louder. Are you out of your mind? There are worse things he could say. What if he doesn't feel the same? What if he's an older man? What if he sees me and doesn't find me attractive? Also, what do you mean by learn from you? Jesse turned to face me as the elevator doors opened. Doesn't find you attractive? Honey, anyone who doesn't see your attractiveness must be blind. I know you're scared. Countless ways could go wrong. But do you want to live with the regret of wondering what might have happened if you had just spoken up? Take the bull by the horns, hon. That's what I'm doing. I'm going to tell Jake that I like him. You're going to do what? I asked, stunned. Are you crazy? Jesse grinned. What if he likes me back? What could go wrong, Riley? I frowned at her. Everything could go wrong. For starters, you're his employee, I whispered, trying to keep my voice down. That's never stopped anyone before, she replied confidently. You're too careful, Riley. Relax, have fun, be spontaneous. Your spontaneity might cost you your job, I said. She shrugged as we walked out of the elevator. We'll find out soon enough. I'm telling him tonight. I'm working overtime. Jessie had always been vibrant and spontaneous, like a burst of fireworks. She was breathtaking, but unfortunately, she had terrible taste in men. She's dated some of the worst guys, most of whom couldn't handle her confidence. From the moment I met her, I admired how she could walk into a room with her head held high, unfazed by the attention she drew. I had no doubt she'd tell Mr. Carmichael about her crush. The problem was, Jessie didn't handle rejection well. Later that night. How was work? I typed into my phone. I stared at the text for a few seconds, contemplating if I could come up with a better conversation starter, and when I realized I couldn't, I sent the text. Almost immediately, he sent a reply. It wasn't fun, but I got much work done today. I think I might be sick. Sick? I sent the text. I told you that overworking yourself is unhealthy, but you wouldn't listen. He replied with a couple of laughing emojis, and I couldn't help but smile. I'll rest this weekend, I promise. Promises are meant to be broken. I don't want promises. I need you actually to take care of yourself, I told him, reminding myself of my mother. Would you like to rest with me this weekend? Sure, I replied. I'd stay in bed all day. Weekends are the only time I get to be away from that overbearing boss of mine. I won't even get up from the bed until Monday morning, I joked. I mean, we could spend the weekend together. You can ensure I rest, and maybe you can keep me up all night. I felt my mouth go dry as I read the text. I could swear that my heart skipped a beat. I was deliriously happy. I couldn't stop reading the text over and over again. He had asked me to come over, and even better, he said I should keep him up all night. I was so happy that I started bouncing on my bed and screaming, "Yes!" at the top of my lungs. Throughout the weekend, I asked him, just to be sure. I want to spend the weekend with you. Do you want to spend it with me? He replied, and I felt like butterflies were let loose in my stomach. Maybe it was high time to take Jesse's advice. Resolute, I typed, yes. See you this weekend, my love. Good night. I need to get some sleep. The next day. You look like a beam of sunlight. I don't think I've ever seen you smile this much. What's going on? Jesse asked as I walked into the office. I smiled even harder, my cheeks flushing with embarrassment. I covered my face with my hands as I headed to my desk, hearing Jesse's heels clicking behind me. Leave me alone, I said, trying to steady my voice. You come here early, practically glowing, and expect me to leave you alone? Jesse countered, catching up to me. Yes, I replied, grinning despite myself. How did your little confession go yesterday? He left early, right after you did. He seemed in a hurry, so I didn't get a chance to tell him. I just left an anonymous note on his desk. I squinted at her. What if the janitor sweeps it away? She laughed. He won't, Riley. Okay, but what if he doesn't feel the same way? I asked, raising an eyebrow. Jesse gave me a look as if I had just sprouted another head. That's not an option. I'm not asking for a relationship. Casual boink boink is fine too. I paused my steps. Boink boink? What's that? Don't be such a prude. I'm just saying, I wouldn't mind being his fun time here and there. Realization hit me right in the face. Ew, he might not want that either, Jess. You have to consider that possibility. Don't pee on my parade, Jessie turned her attention back to me. Tell me why you're beaming. What happened? First, it's rain, not pee. And no, I whined, covering my face with my hands again. I don't want to tell you. Come on, Jesse sighed, exasperated. Spill it. I finally agreed to hook up with Baby, I blurted out, and Jesse's eyes widened in shock. What? She exclaimed. You cannot be serious. Oh my goodness, this is huge. I'm so happy for you. She enveloped me in a tight hug. When? This weekend, I replied. The whole weekend. Jessie started jumping up and down, her excitement evident. I'm so happy for you. Maybe you'll tell him about your feelings. You're going to get some. My best friend is going to get some, she sang cheerfully. Pipe down, Jessie, I laughed, glancing around the office. We're at work. Next Saturday. I stood in front of the door, shaking nervously. This was the right address. I triple-checked it several times on my phone. Moments later, the door flung open, revealing the last person I thought I'd see this weekend. Jake Carmichael, in house clothes, his cheeks flushed with illness. I froze, my mind racing. I wanted to run away to escape this unexpected confrontation, but I forced myself to stay. Jake's eyes widened in shock as he recognized me. Riley? He asked, his voice hoarse. I swallowed hard. Mr. Carmichael, I didn't expect. My words trailed off, unable to form a coherent sentence. Jake rubbed his forehead, looking as confused as I felt. Come in, he said finally, stepping aside to let me in. I hesitated for a moment before stepping inside. The familiarity of his apartment struck me, the same sense of comfort I felt while chatting with Baby. It all made sense now, but it also made everything more complicated. Riley, he called softly, his voice barely above a whisper. I swallowed hard, my mind racing. Was he going to walk away, regret asking me to come over, laugh in my face? Riley, your Will? He asked, disbelief in his tone. Summoning my courage, I looked up. He looked so handsome that the sight of him made my heart ache. He wasn't wearing his glasses, a rare and striking look. Mr. Carmichael, I repeated, my voice barely audible, my gaze dropping. Suddenly, he burst into laughter. I've spent weeks imagining what the person on the other side of the screen would look like. I certainly didn't expect this. My imagination didn't do justice. Riley. I looked up at him. Really? He nodded, grinning. I'm the horrible boss you always complain about. My face flushed crimson and I looked away. Jake gently hooked his finger under my chin, lifting my gaze to meet his. Don't look away from me, Riley, he said, his voice low and compelling. My stomach fluttered and I struggled to maintain eye contact. Jake glanced at me, his gaze tracing my skin in a way that made my heart race. You're quiet. Nervous? He smiled. I shrugged, forcing a smile. Just a little. This is, well, it's a lot to take in. He chuckled softly. I get it. You're used to seeing another side of me at work. He studied my expression briefly, his lips parted like he wanted to say something. I want to kiss you, Riley. Can I kiss you? I felt my heart jump and my stomach flutter. I nodded, trying to speak. But you're my boss. Aren't you shocked? Thank God for that. How else would I be able to enforce a rule that supports workplace relationships? He flicked my nose with his finger. Also, I thought you were cute from the first time I saw you during your interview. My knees went weak at his assertiveness and I fell onto the couch. What about Jessie? Oh my God, Jessie likes you. I sunk my face into my palms, feeling like I betrayed my best friend. Your redhead friend from marketing? Jake frowned, sniffling a little in what looked like jealousy. I already told her that I'm taken. By who? I stuttered, fiddling with my fingers. For the love of God, are you about to deny me now, Riley? Being loved loudly and boldly was a shocker, but it also filled me with apprehension. I was an only child and also my parents' biggest disappointment. I came out of the closet when I was 16. My father was convinced that it was a phase that would pass. He blamed my mother because she wanted a daughter instead of a son. He often referred to me as 2 in 1. I never understood why he was so ashamed of me. I was the son he wanted. I was sporty, I liked trucks, I liked beer, and the only thing I did wrong was being attracted to men instead of women. Needless to say, I wasn't talking to my parents anymore. I had no one except my best friend Jessie, and my new happiness would put my friendship with her at risk. This is all so fast. Jessie, if she's truly your friend, she'll understand. Also, I'm gay. Unless she's hiding some of her testosterone, she never stood a chance, Jake pointed out bluntly. He was starting to sound like Mr. Carmichael again. Mr. Carmichael, I started, unsure of what we were now. That's not my name, at least not to you, Riley, he growled, his brown eyes darkening in frustration and something else. My cheeks flushed as I met his gaze. muttering what he wanted to hear. "Baby." Immediately and swiftly, Jake was towering over me. His fingers were hot against my cheek as he traced the outline of my lips with his thumb. For months, I'd imagined my first kiss with Baby. What would it feel like? I finally had an answer. Warm and soft, his lips pressed against mine in a slow kiss. My hands reached out for him and my body quivered at the contact. I felt my body melt into his, and I held onto his shirt like my life depended on it while he kissed me senseless. My phone buzzed with a video call notification. I pulled away reluctantly. "Baby, my phone." Jake stepped away from me, straightening his shirt, and I stood there blinking, trying to get my senses back. He looked perfect, and I probably looked like a madman. I was breathing heavily, but his breathing was normal. How did he manage to keep his cool? My beating heart picked up its pace when I saw the caller ID. Jesse, on a video call. I knew I had to rip off the Band-Aid. Hey, Riley, she chirped immediately after I accepted the call. "Hi," I replied, noticing how swollen my lips were. "I have something to tell you." "That's my line. I just met a new hottie at my gym. He's not as cute as Jake, but damn his muscles." My view of her shifted as she picked up her phone. "What do you want to—" "Hey, that's not your house. Where are you?" My body froze. Maybe I needed to introduce this to her slowly. Before I could make up my mind, Jake poked his face into the camera. "Hello, Jesse." Silence. It all went silent. "Life wouldn't make you that miserable, right? Baby isn't our evil boss, right?" Jessie screamed, poking her face so close into the camera that I could see her pores. My heart settled and I could finally move again. "You're not shocked or angry?" Jessie continued her tirade. "Oh God, he really is your baby. Feathermate baby. This is all my fault. And here I thought you liked me," Jake chuckled, placing a palm on the nape of my neck. He was so touchy, but I didn't mind. As a matter of fact, I loved it. Jessie hissed, "You have a stinky personality, sir," she added at the last minute, remembering his identity. "Riley needs a gentle and caring lover. Riley, hear me out. I can find one for you." "Did you also find a new job by any chance, Miss Smith?" Jake scowled, placing a kiss on my jaw. Jessie went mute, glaring through the screen. "I guess you're not that bad, sir. You know what, Riley? Call me back when you're alone. Someone is getting on my nerves." "If someone is me, your call will have to wait until specific moments on Monday." Jake trailed his kisses from my jaw to my neck. "A little birdie promised me an amazing weekend, so you'll be seeing a lot of me from now on if you want to see Riley." I shivered at the sensations on my neck. Despite this, my eyes clouded with tears. Jessie wasn't even mad or annoyed. All she cared about in this situation was me. "I love you, Jessie." "That's enough," Jake waved at Jessie and ended the call with a swipe of his finger. "I'm hungry. What do you say we go out to lunch?" My body moved in response to his words, and I followed him out of his apartment. As we pushed through the revolving doors of his building, the warm afternoon air hit my face, bringing me back to reality. Jake had just kissed me until I could no longer breathe. My boss was my baby. I stole a glance at Jake. The reality of the situation hit me hard. My boss, the man I'd resented and admired, was now someone I was about to spend the weekend with. Jake unlocked his car, pointing for me to get in. For confirmation, I whispered, "Baby?" Jake closed his eyes, leaning his forehead on mine. "Stop looking at me with those eyes, Riley. I'm already finding it difficult to control myself around you." My weekend was very eventful, for lack of a better word. I saw sides to Jake that I had never imagined. For some reason, he still preferred the Feathermate app. When I asked him, he confessed that he loved his username popping up with a message on my phone. "Baby sent you a message." Despite Jake approving office relationships, I insisted on keeping it under wraps. Jessie seemed to have converted all her love currency for Jake into hate, scowling at the mere sight of him. At the beginning, I hated my boss, but now I loved him. Love, no matter how unexpected, was the most beautiful surprise of all. The end. Question: have you ever liked the same person as your friend? Do you consider it to be a betrayal? Thanks for watching. Consider subscribing to become a part of our Rainbow Force and stay wholesome.